From the internet, it's the BTB Internet Talk Show. Special guests, Pandemonium, Dean Martin. If you've got the internet, you get a talk show. Here's your host, Mr. BTB himself, Scott Curtis.
That's right. I have the internet and I have a talk show. So there you go. I also have an award-winning podcast. I don't talk about it enough when I do this stuff. So it's called Behind the Bits. I talk to comedians about serious talk about stand-up comedy. So check it out. It's on all the apps. All you got to do is type in Behind the Bits. And if you should happen to find one that's broken, let me know. I found out that I had a couple broken apps and I've been fixing them. So just let me know if you find out that it's broken. I'd appreciate it. So tonight's going to be a special edition. This is a Mount Rushmore of Comedy edition. Now, I believe that everybody has a different view on what a Mount Rushmore should be. So there's going to be some lively debate, and there's going to be some different comedians. So I'm also going to talk about a few comedians to watch in 2021 because I want to. Now, before we get started here, if you've been watching, and I know you have, if you've been watching, I've been drinking every show, and I was drinking a bourbon that the distillery that makes the bourbon decided that they weren't going to talk to me about possibly sponsoring the show. So they're dead to me. I'm going new again. This is another Indiana distillery, Three Rivers Distillery, makes Jesse Truman straight bourbon whiskey, and this was bottled in, or this was put in the barrel in 2003. That's how long it's been in the barrel. And this is what the Three Rivers logo looks like, and it's only available locally here at the Chalet Party Shop and Belmont Beverage. So Chalet Party Shop, Belmont Beverage, if you want to throw a free bottle at me every month, I'll talk about you every single show. That's all you got to do. I think it's easy. It's old enough to date. Great, Tom. I like that. I also want to talk about a podcast I found. It's called The Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. And boy, it is a lot like this. It is three old guys who are super grumpy, squabbling, bickering, and quibbling. It's Matt, Greg, and Brendan, and they talk about all things pop culture. They've got some great guests. It's, like I said, it's kind of like my show, except for it's entertaining. They are a lot of fun. They have great guests. Matt is just about as grumpy as I am, so that's a lot of fun. And you can check them out on all the apps by typing in Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker, or you can just go to, I know I put it in here. I guess I didn't. qblaw.com or qblaw.org. And yeah, they're a great show, a lot of fun. What else do I got to talk about? We are live on all the apps right now. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, but we're mostly on the Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling Twitch channel. So let's make sure we put that up so you know to go there. I'm only going to go a few minutes here on Drinks, Jokes, and or on the other social media shit. And then it's only going to be on Twitch. Twitch.tv, Drinks, Jokes, the letter N, Storytelling. It's that easy. Just go over there and smash that follow button, all right? Just smash it. And with that, I think it's time to bring our guests up. First, we got Jeff Dwoskin. Jeff is the host of Live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show, and the streaming show Crossing the Streams. One of the hosts, I should say. It's nice to see you again, Jeff. It seems like you just keep popping on the show. And you know what? You're delightful, so I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I feel like I'm a regular. I feel like in a few more episodes we'll be able to do a greatest hits episode of just me.
I'm about to call you a co-host.
Just don't call me late for dinner. Why?
I'm about to put you on all the marketing.
Hey, whatever gets it. And speaking of marketing, I'd like to thank Kirkland Water for sponsoring me. It's actually of Kirkland. I keep trying to reach Kirkland. It's the best water because it's purified.
That's Joe Kirkland. They never give the first name. That's Joe.
It's the best.
Yeah. Hey, let's bring out our next guest, the guy who organized all this shit. It's Mick Manhattan. How you doing?
What's going on, everybody? I don't know about you, but after a nice long day, I like to enjoy a bottle of Deer Park.
In a dark cave, apparently.
In a dark cave. I'm on the road, man, so I have to use somebody else's setup today.
Mick's on the run. Excuse us while Mick's on the run. He's in.
No running. I don't run.
Why do they call it Deer Park in the south and they call it Ice Mountain in the north? Does anybody know?
No, I didn't even know. I've never heard of Ice Mountain.
I've never heard of either of those places.
They're both the same thing. So it's just weird to me. Now, I'm glad you're here, Mick, but I'm going to push you aside for a moment because the man who runs the Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling channel has agreed to come on and do this show with me. And boy, am I stoked. I'm going to bring him up. It's Tom Bannis. Tom, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys? I'm excited to be here. It's my second time, but it's nice to meet you, Mick and Jeff. It's a pleasure.
Tom, it's a pleasure to interview in front of the other guy's channel that I'm on.
We're going to put Jeff down here and we're going to put Tom up here. Yeah, because Jeff just lost some points. We'll put Mick. Yeah, let's do that.
I thought I was gaining one. I'm trying.
Hey, Jeff is my second highest rated person on my network.
All right.
That's not saying much. I guess about 2 people.
Second, what's the highest?
Teen Snobs.
How many views do you get? I'm getting over 1,000. Plus, I'm getting over 5,000 on Twitter. There's no way I'm not the number one.
Okay. All right. Jeff is the number one show.
And soon to be the number one on drinks and whatever now that I've been researched.
Introduced.
Well, okay. Some healthy competition. I love this. But Tom, I do want to talk about a couple new shows that are being added to the channel. If I'm going to put the picture up, if you wouldn't mind talking about, well, son of a bitch, stay up. Behind the Funny looks new to me, and Community Theater looks new. Though it looks like Wednesday 8:30 to 10 for Behind the Funny, and Tuesday 8 to 9 for Community Theater. Can you maybe say a few words about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So DJ, I thought you were gonna leave it up. So DJS Community Theater is we're taking. Oh, there it goes, right back up there. We're taking playwrights or scene writers that are able to bring their product to us, and then we're having actors and comedians and industry people all doing a live reading on air. So it's like a table reading, but it's here so they get a feel for it. So it's really interesting. And it's funny because the first time we did it was all comedians, so you thought it was going to be funny, but everybody took it super serious, and it was really interesting. Yeah. And then Behind the Funny, which is interesting to me because you're behind the bit, like BTB, behind the bits and Behind the Funny, but so far away from each other. They're a couple of comedians from the Northeast, so they're based out of, I believe, Massachusetts or Rhode Island, and that's Ace Aceto. I don't know if you met him when we did the 89-hour comedy stream for the launch of the station.
I was on for a lot of that, but I didn't meet Ace.
Yeah, super nice guy. So they also have a long-running podcast, and they wanted to just bring a piece of it to us on Thursday nights. The whole goal of the channel is really to showcase each person that has their own show on the channel, and then help bring our audience to each of those people and shine a little light on, from intermingling all of our audiences, which is really interesting to me, man. And then, So, and we have Lori Summers is actually launching her show in about 2 weeks, where she's going to be a little bit more into like dancing and the hip hop community that she was built into, being a professional dancer before she was a comedian. So she's going to, just all different takes on what it is. But I think the whole channel is really just based on like hanging out after the show and having a drink. So that's why the whole thing is called Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling. So we feel like it's more interesting than just when a comedian's on stage. to catch up with them off stage and just bullshit and hang out and see what it's all about. But,
and I gotta say, you guys have totally fucked up my productivity, because you guys pop up on my phone. I'm doing stuff and I'm like, okay, I gotta watch. And so there I am on the channel watching, having fun, and then I lose an hour. I just lose an hour out of my day. So thanks a lot, Tom. I appreciate it.
Appreciate that. I think we try to be things you could listen to in the background of your workday. It was funny.
Yeah.
My wife the other day, she didn't want to miss the when we had Lisa Lampanelli on. So she's like, I have to watch it, but she had work. She's like, I don't know why you do this in the middle of the afternoon. You're losing your viewers. She's like, so many more people would watch at night. I'm like, they could watch it on the the video on demand. And it was just, it was an honor that I was even able to, get my balls broke by Lisa Lampanelli, which was fun.
Yeah, no doubt.
She's retired and she was so sharp. She was didn't miss
she did not return my emails, so I worked with her once for an entire weekend.
Did you?
So it was the most. I always found it to be the most amazing thing. It was. We worked at this club called Joey's in Livonia, Michigan, and they had to give up like the comedian seats where we would sit like shoved in a corner. They had to give those. They had to sell those seats because she'd go on the radio and she would sell out in a second. And she would get up there and do, let's say in 90 minutes, let's just say 250 jokes. They're quick, right? They're boom, boom, boom. Yeah. But we would do 5 shows. The 250 jokes would be in a different order every single night. It was never in the same order. It was however they just happened to come out. And like as a comedian, Scott, you can when you know what your set is, like to be able to. It's like I was in awe. I always thought it was insane how anyone could keep that much straight.
That's commitment to the craft, baby.
Well, I get confused. I was always told like if you do 3 shows in a night, which I've never really done, is do the exact same set because your mind starts to play tricks on you. Yeah. That did I do this joke already? Yeah. And so like to be able to pull that off the way Lisa Lampanelli did, incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I feel like she's a force in nature.
Yeah, she was. One of my favorites as she was coming up. I do want to make sure that I mention the show directly after mine. It's Dystopia Tonight with John Poveromo, and he's got Billy Van Zant with him tonight, and that's going to be a good one. So John is on at 8:30 Eastern when this is done. I did not invite Dean Martin to the show tonight because he has been super cranky today. So we're gonna go without Dean. My first show without Dean, and we're gonna talk about our Mount Rushmore as a comedy, and I'm gonna talk, and hopefully you guys are gonna talk about people that are either underrated or up and coming people to watch in 2021, because I think that's important. So let's take this over to Mick first, since he's the guy who started the whole thing, and we're going to make it like this so that Mick's got the full screen. Mick, tell us about your Mount Rushmore comedy, please.
All right, so I was watching recently. It was Eddie Murphy and Jerry Seinfeld after their Coffee and Cars episode.
That was a good one.
Well, that was they did a great job, but they did a Q&A afterwards. It was like an hour Q&A where they were talking about the best comedians of all time, stand up, and and it just got me thinking. And then I saw a meme of it was Chevy Chase, Steve Martin, John Candy, and I think it was Martin Short, all standing together, and they're like the Mount Rushmore of comedy. And I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I don't know about that. Definitely not stand up in my opinion. But so that's where I talked to Jeff a bit about it. I was like, I think it'd be cool to talk about the Mount Rushmore of stand up comedy, and like who everybody thinks should be up there.
Yeah, and I think it's different for everybody. I don't think there's any wrong answers. So, who's yours?
All right, yeah, I wrote out a list. So I was kind of going through. I'm gonna try and put probably the most influential. I have a list of my favorites. I have a list of who I think should be the top 4 if they're up there. I'm going to go Don Rickles, Joan Rivers,
Uh-huh.
Lenny Bruce.
Okay.
And either Pryor or Carlin. I'll go Pryor. I think he was more influential in my opinion.
So I'm really glad that you brought up Don Rickles. He's not one of mine, but he is one guy that definitely made me laugh all the time. I mean, every time I saw him, he was so good. So let's talk a little bit about why you picked Don Rickles, because he's usually not, he's very well known. Everybody loves him, but he usually doesn't hit a Mount Rushmore. So why would he be on your Mount Rushmore?
For me, going back and looking through, I think he's popular now. Like, he's always been popular, don't get me wrong, but like,
yeah,
I think more so now since his death for younger audiences. I mean, old timers really know him well. He always popped up. He was a big Vegas guy. He was a lounge guy, and he brought it to late night. Like, he was just so influential into bringing what stand-up comedy looks like to television. I think, and kind of giving you that inside track to what stand-up comedy is, like what a stand-up comedian is versus actors and everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, he would show up on a Tonight Show and such. And he was always on fire. I don't think I've ever seen him anywhere in any interview where he wasn't on point. Even
in the later days, he was totally on point. And really, I don't know if he invented crowd work, but he certainly perfected it.
For sure. And again, like, just the tapings on not just the Tonight Show, but he showed up everywhere. I mean, he was great on the roasts.
Yeah.
The Dean Martin roasts, and he showed up, he was on the roast clubs and things like that. He just, every video I see, he just was always on fire.
Yeah. So based on the merits of Pryor and Carlin, because you put them as either or, okay, let's just say I'm a genie, and if you don't pick one, I'm going to change you from being a 6'8" beautiful man to 5'2" and have a werewolf face.
That's awesome. I'd rather do that.
Easier to find clothes, right?
Let's do F, marry, or kill.
Yeah.
Good old werewolf face, Jeff Dwoskin, or Tom Bannis. Go. I will say, all right. It's just hard. The Mount Rushmore game is always tough on anything that you do, because you have 4 spots, and stand up is so tough. I'm just going through my entire list of, like, I would put him on my personal. I would put him on my personal. I put her on my personal. But yeah, this was like, I was trying to go with more influential, people in the business, and I would probably go Richard Pryor.
Okay.
I mean, he was a huge name. He was the face of stand-up for so long, and what people looked up to.
Yeah, you've already got the werewolf face, according to Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah,
it's called sexual harassment, Tim.
Now, Joan Rivers is one that, it pops up on a few, but not all of them. Obviously, she was a pioneer in comedy, not just being a woman in comedy, but subject matter, going into the personal life versus just observational stuff. And definitely somebody I love, didn't make my list, but somebody who I absolutely loved. Why did she make your list?
She just, as a female comedian and coming up when she did, and with the subject matter she did, like, she was amazingly influential. And I mean, I don't think there's a comedian out there who wouldn't say the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe Jeff Dwoskin. He just doesn't know what he's talking about at the time.
No, I got Joan Rivers right there.
All right.
You stole my list, you son of a bitch.
It's in time.
No, yeah. So I mean, and she was she was hysterical, man. She gets a bad rap for the plastic surgery and the E Entertainment News or whatever.
Yeah.
But she was an amazing talent on the mic.
She didn't take any shit either. I like that.
Yeah.
So did you come up with anybody for up and comers we should be watching for? Because I want to take notes if you did.
Not really. I didn't put together. I put together a list of some of my personal favorites, but I didn't.
Well, throw a couple of those out there. We got time.
Yeah, half of them are dead. Greg Giraldo.
Oh yeah.
Love him.
Greg Giraldo is the
best. Roasts were never the same after he died.
Oh, he was so vicious and amazing, but he had that smile that just brought it all back. Like you can never stay mad at the guy. Stephen Wright is one of my favorites of all time. Yeah. Sam Kinison.
Mm-hmm.
Patrice O'Neal. I love Patrice. If I had to pick one of my personal favorites, who I had seen multiple times up on stage, Patrice O'Neal. He was amazing. And the way he dealt with everybody was just truly fantastic.
Yeah. He was he was a take no prisoners type of guy.
I worked with them for a whole weekend once.
That had to be amazing.
Oh wow.
I always tell the story because I didn't know who he was, and when I worked with him, and because I didn't really watch Opie and Anthony, I just wasn't familiar with who he was. And I always tell the story, and I'm like, had I known who he was, I would have been a nervous wreck the entire time to perform with who I later learned is Patrice O'Neal. You know what I mean? It was like just not really knowing who he was and just being able to meet him as a person. And it was, I think, saved my sanity for. He said the funniest thing to me, like in the world. We were backstage, and he's like, "Hey, Jeff, how'd you meet your wife?" And I said, "Well, we were at a summer camp." And he goes, "Wait a minute!" And he starts belly laughing, and he goes, "It's a joke. I was gonna say, did you meet your wife at a camp? Jeff, you are the whitest person I have ever met."
That's one thing. Like all right, I'm going to gush on Dwoskin because he's probably leaving my network now. I'm going to gush on him a little bit because I love his shows, but I would love to hear more of that. I know you have a billion stories in the green room from you, and I would just love to hear more of that stuff because that stuff always fascinates me. I used to love sitting backstage with everybody.
Maybe we'll just do a show and just let Jeff talk about shit.
I don't know that much.
That's pretty much what he does anyway. So
that's true. No, it's pictures of everybody. He name drops everybody. And
I know. Yeah.
He can name drop with all these great stories.
Yeah. All right, Dwoskin, let's go to your list.
That would actually be a great name for a podcast. Name drop would be a great name for a podcast. Now, new to the Drinks and Twitch channel, Name Drop with Jeff Dwoskin.
Do you know what's funny? Is that Craig Gass wants to do that podcast. It's called Dropping Names, and he wants to make everybody say all the people they slept with, like all the famous people that won't talk about it. He's very good at making people tell the truth. And he did it on part of our cast when we did that 89 hours. And I had to edit it all out. It all hit the editing room floor. So if you didn't see it on that day, you'll never see it. It's deleted. Like I deleted it.
Wow. As luck would have it, Tom, I worked with Craig Gass.
Oh, yeah?
He's the overeater that overate her.
Yes, on Sex in the City.
Yeah. It was a really big deal for my wife because she was obsessed with Sex in the City. She actually came to that show and took pictures with him as well.
Awesome. That's awesome.
The other person, which I know you know, is Richie Byrne.
Yeah.
And I worked with him, and he was in an episode too, and he was rude to Miranda. And he says to me after one of the shows, he goes, "Do you want an autograph for your wife?" And I said, "She doesn't want one from you." Because he was so mean to the character. And he writes one out anyway. I have the napkins still.
That's great.
I think of everybody on the channel, Richie is most like me, just a curmudgeonly son of a bitch. So yeah, I think we get along well. So Jeff,
Super nice people.
Let's talk about your Mount Rushmore of comedy, shall we?
Okay, so I do want to first kind of point out to everyone that people use the term Mount Rushmore, and people assume that it means the 4 greatest. But Mount Rushmore itself is not the 4 greatest of anything. Okay.
No,
are you saying Trump should be on Mount Rushmore? Is that what Jeff Dwoskin is saying right now?
No, yeah. I'm saying that it's Mount Rushmore was created to represent different parts of, or the history. It was just the birth, the growth, and the development, and the preservation of the country. That's what it represents. It's not like here's the 4 best presidents we had to date. Let's put them in stone.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think when people talk about the Mount Rushmore, I just want to be clear, because you say, "Oh, Mount Rushmore." Well, it's got to be Pryor and Carlin then. But it's like it's the 4 people that you believe represent you is what I'm trying to get at. So.
That's what I did. I did the exact same thing. So I'm glad you took it that way.
So can I ask before you start, why couldn't you tell us this before we were before the show so I could have prepped it?
Well, this is just how
it was your fucking idea.
First of all, it was your idea. This is just my interpretation.
Like influential people.
Well, it's just as with anything, it's how you interpret it and make it your own, right?
Yeah, our interpretations. It just seems that mine and Jeff are a little bit more parallel. So, yeah. Which I mean, we are so much alike, so I can see that.
So I mean, I have a list. I just kept writing out everyone, and it wasn't an exhaustive list, but like to me, like I took the 4 that meant the most to me personally.
Okay.
At when I was, say, in the 80s or so, right? When I was kind of developing my sense of humor. And those are Steve Martin.
Thank you.
Rodney Dangerfield. I'm being very clear on this. Dennis Miller, 1980s Dennis Miller. Okay. Not current Dennis Miller. And Joan Rivers. And the reason Joan Rivers was in there was because that's who my parents loved. So I was always, it was always, I had the cassettes, they played it. It was always on. They loved when she would come on, there was always, anytime she was around, they would do that. And then Steve Martin, and the rest I think I discovered on my own. But like to me, those 4, that made me laugh the most when I was kind of growing up. If I was to add a name, it would be Gary Shandling, who his stand-up I thought was some of the funniest stand-up as well. And he easily could be on there as well and replace, say, Dennis Miller 1980s, though I do think Dennis Miller 1980s had the biggest impact on me of that list, actually. Yeah. And if I was going to say of recent, I know you know this person or you've talked to him or been on a show with him, Scott, is Gary Goldman. And of recent comedians, and I'll say, like, I love Ted Alexandro, Craig Shoemaker, Bill Burr, like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, all those. But Gary Goldman's bit, which you can Google right now, on the creation of the task force of the creation of the state abbreviations is I could watch that over and over again and laugh just as hard every single time. If it scroll in my feed, I would never not watch it. It is one of the funniest and most brilliant bits I think ever, and that to me is hilarious.
He's one of my all-time favorites.
Mick mentioned Stephen Wright, who I would consider somebody who I really loved, and Mitch Hedberg. I think
he was on mine.
Is one of the best. Gary's. Hey John, tell Billy Van Sant I said hello. He's one of my favorite people to have interviewed. I've talked to him a couple times. He's the best. You're gonna have a great time. He's so cool. See, I paid attention to your promo earlier, Curtis. But Mitch Hedberg is, to me, the funniest, and I got to see him live before he died, and in Ann Arbor it was him, Dave Attell, who's another one who's super hilarious, and Lewis Black. It was the three of them.
Man.
It was a Comedy Central kind of tour.
I saw that too. Saw that tour as well. It was the Insomniac tour.
Yeah,
so good.
So good.
Yeah.
And like the one thing, a friend of mine, Jesse Pop, he was a local comedian. He's since written for Conan and stuff like that. But he was from here. We used to do the open mics together and stuff. He opened that show, and Mitch Hedberg came out first after Jesse Pop, because in that hierarchy he was the lowest, believe it or not. And so, and he goes, that Jesse Pop, he's one droll motherfucker. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that is the greatest. Like if he could have said something like that about me, I would I could never forgot it. I thought it was the greatest thing ever for Jesse, and to witness it, it was just amazing. But yeah, that was it's hard to believe when I just try not to think about how long ago he died, because it's weird that you realize how much time goes by with some of these things.
Yeah.
But you know, Jerry Seinfeld I thought is great too. But yeah, there's so many great people that we're not going to mention. But
right. I mean, we only have an hour, so
right.
Yeah. Anybody that you've worked with, or anybody that you see now that you think is either ripe to be a superstar or should be a superstar?
You know, I've always kind of struggled with that, because it never seems the right people become the superstars. No offense to the superstars. It just seems who you kind of know and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think like people like Ted Alexandro, I think should be more famous. You know, is Gary Goldman as famous as he should be? I mean, he's on the precipice, right? He's there, but he should be one of those people that everyone's always talking about. Bob Kelly is one of those, you know, like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Rich Voss.
There's a Mitch Fatel is really funny.
He is, yeah.
One of my claim to fame is I worked with him too. And two things. One, he broke character during one of his sets. Somebody heckled him so bad.
Oh.
Which he never does. He never, at least back then, he never did. And the other thing is, which I'm embarrassed, we went out to eat after, me and Mr. Fatel, and we went and got sushi. And he goes to tip. And like, for some reason, I didn't know you were supposed to tip on carryout. I went like decades without knowing that. And but I never haven't not tipped since. I'm like, what? You're leaving. You know what I mean? You pay, right? And it's like, anyway, but that was one of the greatest non-comedy lessons I've learned from a comedian.
I'm glad you mentioned Mitch, because he's one that I haven't actually gone back and watched for a while, but I know that it was early 2000s when he was coming up, right?
Yeah. It's hard now, right? I mean, Netflix puts out like Nate Bargatze had some real headline. You know, when you went on Netflix, they were really pushing his thing last week. You know, but it's like a lot of times Netflix now, which is where a lot of these comedy shows go, they release 100 of them, one time or something. So it's like, they can say they're on Netflix, but who's going to find it? You know what I mean? Who's going to, you don't have that thing where like they're on the Tonight Show anymore and then they become famous. It just doesn't seem to exist anymore.
Yeah. And I don't want to diss Bargatze, but that last special was 75% the previous special.
I don't know. Oh, John Mulaney, I think is one of the funniest people.
Yeah.
And I hope he's back.
Is my mic working?
No. Tom and I are just kind of nodding at each other.
I just said that Bargatze's last special, and I'm not blaming him, because if you can get paid, but 75% of it was his last special, the Tennessee Kid.
Well, Scott, we heard you. But we don't want Bargatze coming after us. So we're just letting you float on that.
I'm not dissing him. I'm dissing Netflix. And
I don't know Bargatze, but I did work on a show with him once. But I didn't really it was like a one-nighter, so I didn't really get to know him.
Yeah. Okay.
I just appreciate that it didn't land, and Scott was like, "Hold on, did everybody hear what I just said?"
It's like he's like this. He has it written down. My go viral moment. Attack NZ.
I don't have it written down. It's just you mentioned him.
Go in for the kill.
Okay, whatever.
Somebody please flip that so we could send it to Nate Bargatze.
All right. This is fun. Let's do Tom's. Tom, what's your Mount Rushmore comedy or your 4 favorites? I don't care.
All right, I am honored to be here with it because I don't know how I got picked on it, but I did the same thing. Like I didn't pick like anything current, but I picked ones that influenced me growing up. Like influence, like when I think of comedy, I think of it. I think Red Fox, I think is super underrated when it get mentioned, but he was hysterical. Like he was filthy when I was little, so you were like, it was an extra treat to listen to that album as opposed to just like seeing somebody on TV. He was so good. I put Henny Youngman because Henny Youngman, for some reason, like when we were growing up, like if you would have like a one-line zinger, my mother would say, "What are you, Henny Youngman?" And then you would start to look into who Henny Youngman was, and I thought he was super funny. And he was just like, to me, he reminded me of like Hedgeberg, like where it was like it didn't have to be a long storytelling joke. It was like just really quick, think about it, and go and move on. And,
I was just gonna say, if you go beat for beat and you put Henny Youngman and Hedberg together, they are so similar. It's really funny. They're the way they deliver is very, very similar.
Mitch Hedberg is the funniest. Like the stuff he comes up with, and then like I went to buy a donut and they asked me if I wanted a receipt, and I could not think of a time I would ever need to prove I bought a donut or something.
Is it weird I still say that every time I would buy a donut when they ask you for the receipt?
Every time.
It's so crazy. And then I put him on there because he was, for some reason, Dave Chappelle has had this weird like flux through my life, right? So when I was younger, we were doing we got our hands on this theater on Staten Island before somebody restored it. And they were like, hey, we'll let you utilize this theater. All you have to do is pay for an air conditioning unit. So one of my friends was really good friends with RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, right? From Staten Island. So Chappelle loves RZA. RZA was on the Chappelle show for this racial debate sequence that was filmed in Manhattan. So we got the call from RZA's people, come down here. It was the night that Jay-Z was filming doing the Black album tour in Madison Square Garden. So he's like, come down here, I'll introduce you to Chappelle. And I remember meeting him, pitching him the idea. He's like, yeah, I'm down, I'll do it. Any friend of RZA's a friend of mine, blah, blah, blah. And then he freaked out and went to like disappeared. So we missed him, that we had his verbal commitment, which was sick. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That is how you name drop right there, Jeff. That's a name drop and a half. And he went right to RZA. He went right to Jason. That is pretty good.
So it's crazy. So now years later, right? I don't see her. He disappears, goes into exile. And I used to love to go to the Comedy Cellar. So where I took a date to the Comedy Cellar one night for like a late show, because usually you get lucky, somebody comes in and does a set. Guess who walks in to do a set? Dave Chappelle, like fresh off of his like freaking out. He's coming back and he's working out his stuff on stage. So now this is where it gets so sick. It's like 12:30 at night, 1 o'clock in the morning. He comes in, he goes on stage. He goes on stage and starts doing like just talking to everybody. So now it's 1:30. Now it's 2:30. Now it's like 3:15, 3:20 in the morning, right? Somebody gets up and he's like, it was so crazy because you could feel his emotion. He's like, you're leaving me? He's like, how are you leaving me? I thought we had something here. You could, like, to the person that was getting up, they're like, I have work in the morning. I can't stay here all night. And they leave. I stayed like till the bitter end. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. He shook everybody's hand and thanked them for coming out on the way out. Such a good show.
Wow.
P.S. I never went out with that girl again. Like that was a one-day thing. And I was like, I wish I could have had that with my wife, because that was a great story. Because I was like, that was so good. But yeah, that was the second time like he had been in that circle. So I feel like it's crazy. I really feel like the universe causes people to like be around other people. Like energy gets forced together for some reason. Yeah. And so Chappelle made it. And then I was so torn on my last one, man, because I feel like same thing. Like I had a whole bunch, like Rodney Carlin, Robin Williams, I feel like was another great soul and energy, and like was so like explosive that you were constantly laughing. Like he would constantly make you laugh when the real him was so much darker, right? on the other side of it. But he's another one that I thought was made mine. So yeah, those are my 4.
I'm really glad you mentioned Red Fox because my parents had a whole bunch of 8-tracks of comedians, and they had Red Fox and Flip Wilson, and I used to listen to that shit all the time.
Yeah,
that was my dad's favorite comedian was Flip Wilson.
Yeah,
and he used to play him constantly.
Oh, he was great.
Oh yeah.
Me and John were just talking about it. I said, Tom is lying. I've seen his Mount Rushmore. It's 4 rock carvings of Larry the Cable Guy.
Well, you mentioned the Comedy Cellar, which is anytime we go to New York, it's the greatest. And the one time we went, I had just worked with Robert Kelly, so I went to see him there, and I was sitting with him, Robert Kelly, Mick, and then we were next to the table. We were next to the table in the restaurant above, which is what they kind of base the whole Tough Crowd thing on. And there was other people there, but specifically I was talking to Rich Voss and Jim Norton. And is this good name dropping for you, Nick? I'm just trying to work it out.
You're killing me,
You're
man.
naming some of my favorites, and I used to see him there when I would go. But where'd you go? He starts changing things out. I'm trying to talk to Jeff, and then my eye line goes away. Jeff, I have no doubt that you can name drop with the best of them, but it's the RZA, man. It's the RZA.
I can't talk.
You know what's sick? That night I got to smoke with RZA, and that was crazy.
Wow.
I'll give you a really funny sidebar. So now we're there to do that. So we're like, in our heads, we're like, great, we're going to get to go to the Black Album concert for Jay-Z's last concert in the Garden with RZA. This is going to be great. He left. Not only did he leave me and my friend there, he left the Jizza there, and he left his son there, right? At Dave Chappelle's studio while he went to the Black Album at the Garden, and then he came back. And so we go outside, and everybody's outside. We're just bullshitting at the end, and he lights up a joint, and he's like, "You want to hit this?" And I'm like, "Of course, you're the RZA." And his son's there, and he goes, "Ooh, mommy's gonna kill you." And he's like, "I'm like, you smoking for your kids?" He's like, "How am I gonna sing about it in every song I have and not smoke? You know, and not smoke for my children?" He's like, "They know I smoke." So it's so crazy. Yeah, I like memories. So I like that one burned in my head. But I never got to the Black Album. But years later, I did get to do an event for Jay-Z and Beyonce, which is crazy.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah, those are probably the two of them and Bill Clinton. I feel like were the most famous I've been around, like next to, you know.
Jeff, you're back down to second place, man.
I don't do drugs, but the one time I did get offered was Jeff Ross before.
And you didn't do it?
So, well, I didn't because it would have been my first time, and I was about to go on stage.
All right.
And let's just say the funny part was it was Jeff Ross. He was taping the show for some documentary he was doing, and I remember sitting there because I was the host of the show, and I remember he's ending the show because I knew because it was the second time we'd done it, and he was going to go long. He had talked about going long this time to get extra stuff out, and I'm like, he was so high, he got to it. He went through it too fast, and he got to the end, and it was just kind of funny. But I tell you, there's nobody that roast stuff that he does on the fly.
Yeah. Man,
nobody better. I mean, it's
very quick-witted.
Wow.
So good.
Okay, I want to go to me before we do a wrap up.
Go ahead. There you go.
And before I get started, I just want to say, if you haven't noticed, I've done 3 pours of this shit because it's really good. It's Jesse Truman, and you can only get it at Belmont Beverage and Chalet Party Shops here locally, and it's made by 3 Rivers Distilling Company or something like that. It's really good. I hope they sponsor me, because if they give me free shit, I will drink all of it.
I am with it.
Okay, now I am going to change things up because it's my show, and I'm going to talk about the comics who I think you should watch in 2021, because that's what I do. They have all been guests on my podcast, and you may or may not know these names. The first one is Gabe Kia. His album Dumber Than a Fish came out last year, I'm sorry, and he's at gabekia.com. One of the funniest guys, naturally funny guys that I have talked to, and one of the nicest guys. And also, I think he is the only comic that I know that is on all three of the comedy channels on SiriusXM. He's on the clean channel, the regular channel, and the dirty channel. I don't know the names of them, but he's on all three of those channels. Absolutely hilarious. Absolutely just very easygoing, and I don't want to say low energy. When I talked to him, we talked about medium energy, just like a regular conversation, and he really does it well, and he just keeps people leaning forward and really getting into the acts. So I absolutely love Gabe. So that's Gabe Kia. Just hit your Google machine and check him out. The other is a Chicago-based comic, Rena Calm. Rena, I think, was my third guest. And I got to say, she is more committed to the craft than just about anybody I know. She traveled across the country and pretty much lived in her car during the pandemic and did outdoor shows. Just one of the funniest women on stage right now, and also can do a pun. She can do a life story. She can tell you how stupid normal white people are, and she can go through all of that in a set and not lose the audience. Absolutely hilarious. Take a breath. I'm going to talk about somebody that's on the channel, and I'm not doing it because I want to light him up or anything like that. He was a pretty early guest on the podcast, and it's amusingly enough, his management has contacted me twice again to have him on the podcast because they don't know he's already been on. But absolutely love my friend John Poveromo. So John is obviously a force of nature. He's up next with his Dystopia Tonight, but his comedy is just so cutting, and he absolutely does not give a shit. I mean, when he goes up there and he talks about his point of view, if you come to him with an alternate point of view and start heckling him, he is going to kick you right out because he can outdo any heckler. Very funny. If you look at his stuff on YouTube, the funny thing is you will see that he does a comedy set exactly the way it's supposed to be. Start off strong, have great middle stuff, and end absolutely perfectly. Just one of the best comics I have seen. And I didn't know his name before his agent brought him to me. And that's John Poveromo.net. And John, you need to update your SSL certificate, by the way. Yeah, just one of my favorite all-time people. You know, I do the podcast. I've done, I think, 67 episodes now, and I've talked to probably 72 people because I've got so many in the bank. I really bond with a few people, and John is one of them that I really bonded with, and we became friends. So all three of those comics, Gabe Kia, Rena Calm, and John Poveromo, please hit your Google machines and follow them because they are going to go places. I know they are. So let's go with my Mount Rushmore. I took my Mount Rushmore almost exactly the way Jeff did, by how they influenced me. So I've said this story so many times, but some people may not have heard it. When I was young, what's this? Look at Curtis dropping the IT knowledge. Yep, I'm a consultant, baby. And what we got? I also don't know what that certificate is you mentioned, haha, but I will Google it and update it. Oh, and he said he was humbled and flattered. Oh, great. Thanks, John. Thanks for watching. Anywho, my top guy was the first guy I discovered as a comedian, and he was on the Mike Douglas show, and it's Tom Dreesen. I've got his book right here, still standing, the Tom Dreesen story. So he did a bit about drugs, about not doing drugs. I did not take his advice. I did a lot of drugs, but he did a joke about that on the Mike Douglas show. I talked to him about that on a Facebook group and misquoted his joke. And he said, you know what? I haven't even thought of that joke in 30 years, but here it is correctly because I totally mistyped it. Anyhow, I asked him to be the first guest on my podcast, and he was. But what happened is I saw him on Mike Douglas, and I fell in love with him. And that was back in the 70s. And the only way I could follow a comedian then was TV Guide. So I would look at all the shows and see where he was going to be. So he did Mike Douglas, Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Midnight Special, Soul Train, and Johnny Carson at the time. And so I would watch him anytime I could. And then he started becoming a regular on the Dave Letterman show. Segue into my second favorite, my second guy on the list is Dave Letterman. So David Letterman was when he came out with the morning show, and we're talking the very first show he did that he only did a few episodes of. I used to skip school to watch the morning show because I was in love with Dave Letterman. And then I watched all of his late night shows, usually as they were being run, because I didn't have a VCR that recorded, and absolutely loved Dave Letterman. My mom used to say, "Oh, you're acting like Dave Letterman again," and that's what I was doing. So that was obviously my next guy, and along with him at the same time was Steve Martin. So one of Jeff's picks, Steve Martin, just simply because his in your head non sequitur stuff was so weird and made you, I mean, you absolutely did not know what was coming up next. I absolutely loved Steve Martin, bought his albums, listened to him constantly. And then later in life, I discovered Gary Shamling, and that was through the first Gary Shamling show. That was the one that was on regular TV, not for very long, before he did the one on HBO. And I saw him do a bit there, and I absolutely fell in love with him. So I looked for him everywhere. Once again, no internet, but I was looking for him everywhere. And Gary's delivery, the way he talked about stuff and saw it so much differently than everybody, just totally turned me on. And so my top four is 4 white guys. So I'm not going to apologize for it, because those are the ones I discovered, and those are the ones that really influenced how I do comedy. So those are really my 4, along with the ones to watch, and that's all I got to say about that.
You know who I want to honorable mention? Mel Brooks. I think he was like such an influence too, but I don't know if he did stand up, but I know his comedy was a huge influence on my young psyche. And Norman Lear, All in the Family. My mother said I wouldn't go to bed if it wasn't on TV as a baby. Like I guess that seeped into my subconscious my whole life.
And when you're talking about comedy minds, Rob Reiner, who is kind of a product of the Norman Lear universe, if you want to go into universes, is an absolute genius too.
Yeah.
My favorite Gary Shandling joke, the one that I always remember, is when he says, "Is it Porsche or Porsche?"
That's the one.
It's Porsche. So I was driving my Toyota.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the joke that got me. Yeah,
me too. Exactly.
Yeah, isn't that hilarious? Yeah.
Oh, great.
One of my favorite Steve Martin jokes is I do a lot of work with unwed mothers, helping them get their start, and it's such a subtle joke. But it's so funny. So funny.
I mean, you would never know what was going to come out of his mouth. I think Emo Phillips kind of took a little bit of that and put that into his act.
Yes.
Another guy who won't do my podcast. And I'm going to give Paula Poundstone an honorable mention while we're all here, because not only will she not do a podcast for me, she won't do a cameo for me. So I am blacklisted in the Paula Poundstone universe.
Well, how was that?
I think I asked for too specific a stuff.
Oh, hey, John, Scott told me not to put you on my list. You were originally on my list. So if you can get me Gary Goldman on my show, it'd be really funny, since he said no to Scott. I'd really appreciate it.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, you owe me. I watched the puppet thing. Okay. The
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I loved it. I thought it was great. John and I had a conversation too. He was.
I didn't. About the same person?
No. I'm saying John and I had a conversation.
I know. Are you ever going to put that up?
I don't know. It's all beeping. Beep. I don't know. I gotta see how explicit it is.
I will tell you one comedian when I was a kid that he's still like I can go back and listen to many times is Richard Lewis.
Yeah.
He was
and you know what? He had kind of a Gary Shandling sensibility, but he took it a little bit further.
He got the neurotic down, man. I think he perfected it. Even like you had Woody Allen, you had, even Larry David to an extent doing that, but Richard Lewis, man, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. And also has shot me down for the podcast. So yeah, it's
I've gotten a few notes. I mentioned Bill Burr real quick, Tim, earlier.
Did, yeah.
And I was kidding, John. If Scott has like 10 in the can, I've got like 40 shows in the can.
Yeah.
So it's
I don't know how you I don't know. I do look at how many shows I do. I have nothing in the can. I'm on vacation this week and I have nothing in the can.
Well, you know what it is? You know what it is when you ask somebody who's famous, I guess, you can't go, "Oh, can I interview you in 4 months?" You got to the second they say yes, you gotta get that on tape as quick as possible.
I do, and then I put it right out.
Well, I mean, I like to, pace myself. So I only do one a week, so it's like,
That's fair.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for giving your Mount Rushmore of comedy, and this has been a lot of fun. Dean is really pissed off. He's up there pacing, saying, "You son of a bitch for not letting him on." Next week, you're on, Dean. I got you. Okay, buddy? I do want to mention that I also am a stand-up comedian, although not as well-versed as Jeff, who's been doing it for 18 years. But I'm taking a comedy class by a guy named Robert G. Lee, and learning a lot from it, and got a lot of great notes
fan
on
of the
Tuesday.
South. Real fan of the South, this guy.
Yeah. Definitely a guy to learn from, because he is Norman Lear's favorite warm-up comedian for shows. So obviously not a super famous guy, but he's got a dry bar special and has worked with Norman Lear ever since All in the Family days. So he was the regular guy on Cheers, and just very, very, very good comedian, and I'm learning a lot. So I didn't bring a picture or a website because he doesn't even have one, I don't think. But anywho, I'm learning from him, and I want to thank everybody for being on. I want to thank Jesse Truman bourbon whiskey that was put in the old cask in 2003. I have never done 3 pours in a show, but it was so good I did 3 pours, and I'm feeling pretty good right now, and it's tasting pretty good. So I'm going to cut this all up and send it to Belmont Beverage and see if they'll give me some free whiskey, because I'll take it. But we've got John Poveromo coming up in exactly right now, so we're going to end this